when I got a call at the conference, and it was my dad, and he said, Jeff's been in a crash. So I flew home immediately, and before I got there, he had passed away.
Thank you for tuning in to the Sally Allen podcast, where we give voice to stories of resilience. Hey everybody, it's your host, Sally Allen, again for season 3 of the Sally Allen podcast. And I am really excited about this season because we have such amazing speaker. And today we have this incredible speaker, Christine Maddela. Did I say your name correct?
You did.
Maddela, Christine Maddela. And one of the reasons why I asked her to make an appearance on my podcast is because we met about 2 years ago, maybe even over 2 years ago.
2.5 years ago.
Yeah, and we were both sharing our stories on stage, and I heard her story, and it was such a heartfelt but resilient story. I knew that she would be a good fit today for our audience, but I also know that she will inspire our audience with her story, because not only that she has a resilient story, she's also a women-owned minority business owner of a Storyville Road, and she is the only female business that's contracted with the NFL.
Production company that's contracted with NFL. I knew I'll mess it up somehow, but it's so great to have someone of her caliber, knowing her past and what she's been through. She's also been a journalist for over 20 years, but I'm so excited for her to share her story. So I'll stop talking and I'll introduce her. Christine Maddela, welcome to the Sally Allen podcast. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. I am so thrilled to hear what you have to share with us today. I don't know where we'll start. This is not scripted, but I know you have an incredible story and it ties into what you do today. So you start where you want to.
Well, and you gave me such a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much. So yeah, I'm in my newest chapter, which is entrepreneurship. And like you mentioned, I spent 20 years as a news anchor, reporter, correspondent all over the country. And that lifelong of storytelling set me up to start Storyville Road. So we're a full-service video production company with storytelling at the heart of what we do. And that all comes from my journalism background and telling people's stories. So kind of like what you're doing here today.
Yeah. Wow. So where were you a news anchor before you started your own business?
All over.
So
wow. I went to the University of Missouri for their journalism school. They have a renowned journalism school, the oldest journalism school in the country. So I went there for journalism, worked there in Columbia, Missouri, El Paso, Texas, Nashville, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., here in Vegas. And then I started my business in 2021.
Wow. So before we move on, I want you to tell our audience, if there is someone, in college, going into college, and they want to be a journalist, what advice would you give to them?
It's a changing industry, tremendously changing industry. So really looking and seeing what opportunities there are in the field. So what's drawing you to journalism? Well, some of the things that drew me were, again, that storytelling aspect, not having every day be the same. I knew I wasn't interested in a desk job where I would clock in at 8 o'clock, clock out at 5 o'clock, and every day would look the same. So that's really a big part of what drew me to journalism, was being on the front, having a front seat to history and being able to talk to people and learn about people that shape our communities. Now, however, the industry is changing so much. So we had the first major change in 2008, and then social media. So the diversification of content has been something that has dramatically changed the journalism industry, with people being able to broadcast on any channel, basically, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and kind of diluting the flow of information. So kids now, they don't grow up watching traditional television either. So being able to really find out what journalism is in 2024, 2025, that's a much different path.
I have so many questions about that, but I'll talk to you after, because I feel like there are advantages and disadvantages with all the media outlets, including social media. Like you're able to watch a presidential debate on Facebook. I think that's cool, but I'm sure there are some disadvantages to so many media outlets. Do you feel like there are?
It's the funding model. It's the funding is not. It's not unique to journalism, but funding is where things get messy. So again, I mentioned the diversification of broadcasting. So you have the diversification of the funding model. So traditional media outlets relied on advertisers to keep the lights on, pay the salaries, pay the bills. Well, when it was just 4 major networks, they had a lot of money. Now with ad revenue being split among digital marketing, social media, YouTube, all over, that means less money to traditional media outlets, and you're seeing media outlets dilute their commitment to journalism, and the lines and the ethical lines are being blurred.
Wow, so she really knows her stuff. So she's the person to talk to. But I have seen you on social media. I've been following you for a while, especially on LinkedIn. And every time I see you, what comes to my mind is heart-centered. I feel like you're very heart-centered in your business, in your leadership, in the way you conduct yourself in the community, in your give back. I've seen that. And I feel like I love that type of business owner, leader, heart-centered. How does that translate into your business and what you do today?
I love that you said that, and I love that that's an observation because it's intentional. So our commitment to empathy, to seeing someone's whole person, to appreciating everyone as they show up is something that's at the core of what we do. And our values and our mission is really centered in the fact that our shared humanity is our stories. And being able to create a company that values each individual, whether it's a client, whether it's a team member, an employee on our team, is something we're deeply committed to. And I also think from a business perspective, it's smart business. When you lead with vulnerability and when you lead with empathy, you make stronger connections on your team and with your clients. You build relationships. You go beyond the transaction. You pay me, I do thing. You know? And so once we get away from transactional relationships, we can move the needle and understand how we as individuals and how me as a small business owner fit into the global interconnectedness that is our community. And so how can I use my talents and skills to uplift underserved communities, to bring awareness to nonprofits, to help others, to strengthen and diversify our economy? When we think broader and bigger beyond revenue, I think that's how we as a communal society can uplift everyone.
And I experienced that from you. Because when we met the last time, you shared some things about your business and asked me, did you know you could do this and you could do that and you could do that? And I never knew about those things. So I did reach out to Monica Coburn, shout out to you, to say like, hey, I was talking to Christine Maddela and she told me, she's like, of course she told you that. She is. And I know that will take my business to the next level once I get those certifications and I do those things that you were sharing. Your heart is so big. You're not afraid to share. I feel you truly live that when you lift others up, you rise up too.
Absolutely.
I truly see that in you.
And that's a fundamental belief I have. I don't think there are finite, it's not a zero-sum game.
Right.
We don't live in a finite society where if I share a tidbit of information with you, then you're going to take what I have.
Exactly.
I don't live in that space. I don't have that fear. I fundamentally believe that what's for me is for me.
That's right.
What's for you is for you. If there's anything I can do to help you or anyone else, I'm willing to do that because why wouldn't I?
Yeah. And it's more fulfilling for you because I feel living in an abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity mindset, it's just so rewarding for you. And I do believe what goes around comes around.
Mm-hmm.
So you get rewarded more the more you give. Yeah. So that segues nicely into what I wanted to ask you. One of the reasons why your story attracted me so much is that you went through something so horrible and you came out of it so resilient. I'd love if you would share a little portion of that.
So growing up, I was an only child until I was 8. And my little brother, Jeff, came along. And I wanted a sibling so badly. And I just remember, being at the hospital when he was being born, and I was dancing and, just so excited to welcome my brother into the world. And so we were, I would say, oddly close in the sense that, I hear so much about sibling rivalry and fighting and stuff like that, and we never were. He was my little buddy and my best friend since the beginning. So growing up, we were just really close, and my dad and my brother and I, we would go out and we would practice football and at the park, and I always said I was going to play in the NFL when I grew up. And so my dad would take me out and I would run routes. I was going to be a wide receiver. So we'd run routes at the park. And then when my brother came along, he was our quarterback. And so the three of us would go out and we'd play and practice and everything like that. So we were just best friends, my brother and I was his protector. Because I was so much older. I was his babysitter, I was his protector, I was his younger, cooler mom. So I was all of those things to him. And we had kind of planned out, okay, I was living in Nashville at the time, working at the ABC station. He was getting ready to look at college. He was in high school and heading into his senior year looking at college. Okay, he's going to go to Vanderbilt so we can be in the same city in Nashville, and then from there, we'll figure it out. And we had planned out, all right, we'll always be in the same city.
Wow.
And that was just kind of our plan because we were BFFs. So it was 2008, and I was in Chicago at a journalism conference, and candidate Barack Obama and John McCain were speaking at that conference and everything. And so I was there prepared to cover that. When I got a call at the conference, and it was my dad, and he said, Jeff's been in a crash. So I flew home immediately, and before I got there, he had passed away. And so when I arrived at the hospital, I see a group of teenage boys leaving, their faces red, crying. And, so I saw that. When in travel, when I was on my way, I was just, kind of thinking, okay, worst case scenario, what if he's paralyzed? I'm thinking that. And that, to me, was worst case scenario. And then I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll move. And because we had always planned to be in the same place together. So that was a real tough plane ride and transportation. Even though I was just from Chicago to St. Louis, it felt like forever. So then I walk in, I see a priest standing next to my dad, and my dad just said, Jeff's gone. And I collapsed on the hospital floor, and hospitals, the lighting is all fluorescent lighting, and those are some moments that I'll never forget. Feeling that tile, the white tile at the hospital, and feeling like I couldn't see from those fluorescent lights, and everything seemed like I felt like I couldn't hear. It was just, I was so disoriented with that news, and then I went into a bathroom. The nurses and doctors everyone in the emergency room was trying to pull me up off the floor, and I just went in the bathroom and shut the door and laid on the bathroom floor in the hospital for I don't know how long, and then finally went to see his body, and that launched me into a really dark place in my life. It's one of those things that turns your life upside down. So that was July of of 2008. And we were, as a family, just trying to figure things out, going back to work. I poured myself into work, but I was struggling. You know,
Yeah.
I was definitely struggling. I'd lay in bed until the very last second until I got to work, and then I functioned at work because it gave me something to focus on.
Right.
And I poured myself into work, and I did a good job, but I was certainly struggling. 9 months later, it was Cinco de Mayo, and I was getting ready to go out with a girlfriend of mine when I got a call. And it was my neighbor, or my parents' neighbor. And he said, "Hi, your mom is in an ambulance with your dad. They're heading to the hospital. He had a heart attack." So then it was the evening, so I couldn't find a direct flight. So I get in the car, and I'm driving from Nashville to St. Louis, which is about a 5-hour drive, and I'm just driving, you know, just trying to get there. And again,
That must trigger you, though. You're like PTSD going there.
Well, yeah, I hadn't finished mourning my brother,
Right.
and then now I know no information, you know, just that he'd had a heart attack. But again, feeling like I had just gone through this with my brother. I'm trying to think positively, but
Yeah.
trying to stay safe on a 5-hour drive, but it's not a good situation, you know? And so same kind of thing. I get there and my dad's gone. You know, I'm just, and I'm in, it's a different hospital, but I'm just going through these same things and hospital smells and then I go and see my dad's body. And then at this point I feel cursed. You know,
Right.
like this is
yeah.
my two guys, the closest people in my world in 9 months are gone. You know, so I'm just, I almost don't know how to process that. And I think that also led to some really delayed grief because I was still grieving my brother.
Yeah.
And then to have my dad pass away, I remember that. So that was May. And then in July, I picked up the phone and I dialed my dad's number because I had a question.
Oh.
And then it hit. I was like, oh my gosh,
Wow.
It's like something your brain knows, but then your body has a way of protecting you from pain. So I think there was certainly some delayed grief and things like that. But I will say, with the help of grief counselors and therapy and things like that, I've been able to move into a place where that my darkest time has also given my life so much purpose.
I love that. I love that. And I don't know if you see me scribbling notes because I have all these questions. Because there's so many layers to what happened to you. But what I want our audience to hear, there's a common thing that happened with both of the passing of your brother and your dad is that you did not get to say goodbye. Mm-hmm. How did you process that through? Because for someone going through that, what would you say to them about processing that through? I know you went to grief counseling but that has to be hard.
Yes. And that's probably something that, you know, I beat myself up about for sure, especially feeling my whole life like I was my brother's protector.
Yeah.
And then that I wasn't able to protect him in the end was something that I really put myself through a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of survivor's guilt. You know, it's just that internal monologue that's like, okay, if I would have done this and you can go down that rabbit hole forever.
The ifs, all the ifs, yeah.
Yeah. What if I should have, it should have been me.
Yeah.
You know, all of these things. And you can really spiral, I think, without help.
Yeah.
Without professional help. And that was a topic, when you talk about not being able to say goodbye, that was a topic I dealt with in group therapy, particularly afterward, because when I went to group therapy, I met people who had lost family members in a variety of ways. And a lot of it was cancer or long-term illness. And so when sharing our stories, I had great empathy for them because I couldn't imagine watching someone deteriorate for months and months, how painful that process is. And they had great empathy for me because they couldn't imagine someone just disappearing without the time to make arrangements, say goodbyes. They were sharing with me, oh, we had some beautiful moments. It was very tough to watch someone physically turn into an unrecognizable version of themselves. But at the same time, we were also able, and they had a very cognizant, their loved one had knowledge that they were dying.
Yeah.
And the conversations that came from that and being able to share, the I love yous and the here's what to do next and all of those things, that I did feel robbed of that. And I've gone back and forth. There's no rather, right? What happens, and there is no rather. Would I rather have had the time and there's really no good answer to that. My grief isn't worse than theirs, and just having the time didn't necessarily ease any of their grief. So, but certainly that is an element of sudden loss.
Yeah.
Car crashes, on anything unexpected.
Right. And the grief is different. Everybody has to grieve differently, and the time frame is different also. I see you still tear up as you talk about it, right? Your brother, those were the men in your life. They were it. You love them so much. But I think one of the things I do when I talk to my clients, because sometimes they come to me with that, being a mindset coach, and one of the things I would say, and I don't know if this worked for you, is you've got to just talk to them as if they're here and tell them what you want to tell them, because you have to get it off your chest. Was that something that you also did through your counseling?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. And there are still times when I'll say something, and I'll talk to them. And I think a lot of it was really moving from this place of feeling cursed or feeling like there was something wrong with me or my family or something like that, and then moving into a place where I can just look more positively at the situation. So I certainly had a time when images and smells and things like that haunted me. The smell of a hospital just would turn my stomach. And I would have images, and seeing their bodies, was something that really kept me from sleeping and, would really launch me into some dark places, because you can't unsee some things. But healing from that and moving toward remembering our positive times together and happy memories and things like that, and not dwelling in that. Again, facing all of those feelings, I think is really important in order to grow from it, versus hiding or self-medicating or shoving under the rug. So relatively recently, actually, even though their deaths were many years ago, I moved from just, people say gratitude. Oh, I'm grateful for this. And I used to do that. I used to use grateful as just a term, but really started practicing gratitude in an intentional way. And that transformed a lot of things for me.
I love that. One of the process I use is called feel. And you talk through that process, feeling everything, even when you remember the sense of the hospital, and then going like the group therapy, dealing with it, listening to what other people are going through. And I feel that now you're at that healing process, and gratitude is one of the things. But I love what you said, to understand saying you're grateful, but actually articulating what you're grateful for and get it out there I think it helps more, because when you break it down, I can say all day, I'm too blessed to be stressed, I'm grateful. But what does that mean?
Right.
What does that mean? I'm grateful for my house, I'm grateful for my car, I'm grateful for my dogs. So I feel that's part of the healing process. Before we move on, can you tell us one more thing that helps you in the healing process, or something man, I am in the healing process?
I'll just go more into the gratitude practice because, excuse me, the gratitude practice is something that it takes practice and it takes a lot of mindset shifting. So being able to now come to a place and say, I'm grateful truly beyond words, but I'm able to feel gratitude for everything, including the worst things that have happened in my life. That last part, being able to say, oh, I'm grateful versus I'm grateful for everything that has happened. That is a bit of a mind bender.
Yeah.
But when I really lean into that, I know without Jeff's death and without my dad's death, I wouldn't be the person I am today. So I can still have gratitude for the darkest moments.
Yeah.
And that is a line that took me many, many years to get to. Because even if I can say, oh, I'm grateful the sun came up, I'm grateful I have food to eat, I'm grateful I have a roof over my head, but being able to truly feel gratitude for the things that on the surface look like the worst. And I would never wish some of the things I've been through on anyone. But being able to move through it and look at it and still acknowledge the grief, but have space in the grief for gratitude is another level unlocked.
I love that. Absolutely. The mindset shift is so important to see that. You can say, now I can say I'm grateful for my past and everything that happened. In the midst of it, you can't. So to take that, to know that regardless of what someone's going through, that it sounds cliche, but this too shall pass, and years down the road, you can look at it, be like, you know what? I'm so grateful for that time, so it made me who I am today. Mm-hmm. So who you are today. Talk to us about how you got into, I know your career got you into your business, but Storyville Road, I love that. Talk to us about that.
So storytelling and how we create our own stories, it is a journey, just like we've talked about.
Yeah.
And how each element of ourselves come together to form this path that we travel is rooted in our story. So that is a tribute to the path we all travel, Storyville Road, as we put our own story together, and that it is a journey. And keeping storytelling at the center. Because, yes, we're a video production company. We can technically do a lot of things. You know, we have cameras and we have microphones and we have lighting and we can do all of these things. But honoring our shared humanity, which is our stories, that is really our secret sauce.
Yeah.
So taking that and all of my experience as a journalist and a storyteller in that way, putting it to work for my clients under my new business, Storyville Road, is really where the name comes from.
Wow, and how long has Storyville Road been around?
3.5 years now. So we're a toddler. Yeah. My business is a toddler.
Talk to us about, so I wrote down here, when you were young, you thought you'd play in the NFL, and you are playing in the NFL right now, and it excites me so much to ask you. Tell us more about that. How did you get into the NFL to do their video production? Yeah,
so that is a really cool full circle moment, being a kid and saying I was going to play in the NFL, and having a dad who looked at his daughter, and, you know, he could have easily...
Right.
You know, broke the news to me that, hey, you're not going to play in the NFL. He could have, even in a loving way, he could have done that. But he didn't. Instead, he took me out to practice. And so I think there are certainly some lessons there. And then 3 years ago, we signed on to become a video production contractor with the National Football League. And so it is a full circle moment how I wanted to play in the NFL, and then now I am just in a different way. I'm not on the field as a wide receiver in the way that I was going to be as a kid, but am still in that ecosystem. And it wasn't until this past February with the Super Bowl here in town, when all of the NFL personnel was in town, that I found out we were the only women-owned production company contracted with them. And I was
what
like, wait,
an honor. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I thought, well, maybe you all need to work on that.
But an honor for them.
But it is really
Yeah.
it is a really cool moment to recognize that, and especially for being as young as we are in the business world, to have accomplished that connection is an honor.
Yeah, and talking about how young you are in the business world, how young your business is, and how young you are, what advice would you give to any woman listening to this, say they want to start their own business? Because I do have a friend who she wants to start a media company, and they don't know where to start, and it's so scary because you're in the corporate space. What advice would you give to them as they are, gearing and preparing while they're in the corporate space? Let's talk to that demographic. To start their own business, what advice would you give to them?
Know thyself. That's my biggest piece of advice, because business ownership will challenge every aspect of your life. So when I say know thyself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and release the ego. Because your business, if you are running on ego and you think, oh, I know some numbers, but if you cannot dive into that financial tracking, financial forecasting, your P&Ls, things that maybe you didn't have experience with, like I didn't. I'm not a numbers person. I'm a words person.
I am too.
And so, but when you start a business, you're going to have to learn those numbers really quickly, and you can't hide from it, and vice versa. If you're a numbers person and you know the accounting side and you know bookkeeping, you need to know all the other things: business development, HR, the hiring process, retention, and scaling. All of those things come at you. So knowing when you want to start a business, who are you at the core? Are you someone who likes being able to rely on that corporate paycheck? Because you're going to have to release that. And especially if you bring on employees, that payroll tax is going to hit. And sometimes I'm like, wow.
Trust me, I know.
It takes a lot to employ people.
Yeah.
But that's also what drives me, knowing that it's not just me. I have a team, and they're raising families and on their own career trajectories. And that's a great amount of trust to put in me as a business owner. And it's a trust I don't take lightly. So when you know, hey, because there may be people who, oh, I make the best cupcakes. You should start a business. Friends and family always say, oh, you should start a business. You're really good at cupcakes. Well, you may be good at making a dozen cupcakes at a time, or 2 dozen cupcakes at a time. But can you replicate, scale, maintain quality control, health inspection? If you're on the strip, union, all of these things that come into play, know yourself and your willingness and your capacity for risk, capacity for development, learning. All of those things come into play. So I will say business ownership sounds fun a lot of the times, but in actuality, it is challenging. It's a grind.
I agree. It's challenging starting my own business. I started in 2020 also. I've had it for 10 years. It was a hobby. So in 2020, I decided to go full-time on everything you're saying exactly the way, because I had to figure out, I know what my skills are. I'm very organized. That's my skill set. When it comes to the finances, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do anything. So would you advise getting a business advisor to help? Because that's one of the things I didn't do.
Surrounding yourself by people who are experts in their field.
Yeah.
Is whether it's a business advisor or whether it's an accountant, whether it's an HR company or contractor you use. I do think it's a mistake to just think you can muscle through it yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking employees necessarily, but learning centers.
Yeah.
Can I rely on this person, and do I trust this person to have knowledge in licensing, for example? Can I trust this person to have knowledge in business development, sales? Can I trust this person in marketing? Whatever your gaps are, address those gaps. Like we were talking about before, leaning into your fear or leaning into the feelings, it's lean into those weaknesses.
Yeah.
Because that's where you'll be able to really take an honest look at yourself and your business and say, I don't know this. And this, for example, cybersecurity insurance could jeopardize the entire thing.
Wow.
You know, especially if you're working with a large corporation. You need to make sure you're not the weak link in the supply chain.
Wow, that is gold right there. If you're working with large corporations, and even if you're not, smaller corporations, you can't be the weakest link in the chain. I that really spoke to me.
Well, and if you think about it too, you look on a global level. We've had instances here in our own city, the MGM Resorts International cybersecurity incident.
Yeah.
There are banks. Bank of America just had an issue yesterday. We always hear about these cybersecurity issues or hacks or things like that on large corporations or utility companies, things like that. Well, we hear about the large ones, but research shows the weak points where hackers get into large corporations are through their vendors, through their suppliers.
Wow.
Because we, as smaller businesses, have weaker systems in place than the global corporations. So oftentimes, if I'm a vendor supplying this Fortune 100 company, a hacker may get in through me because to get to the larger corporation, because my systems aren't in place. Well, now we have a global corporation who has the legal teams, has the funding but we messed up the whole thing. So now that could bankrupt our business.
Yeah,
and we're out of business because we caused a major legal and cybersecurity issue for our global partner.
Wow. So if you're listening to this, beef up on your security because you could be the weak link.
And that's also not cheap.
Right.
You know, so acknowledging those things, I think those are all the unsexy things that people don't think about when starting a business. What are your insurance minimums?
The first time I learned was when my friend who's a lawyer, he said, is your business an LLC? I'm like, what? What's an LLC? So he walked me through a lot of things and I realized you need an attorney in your back pocket. Like you need an attorney, you need protection, you need insurance. So I learned a lot through all of that. So everything you're saying resonated with me, how I started my business, because I did not know how to start it correctly. I think I'm in a good place now, but definitely if I knew all the things that you were sharing now, it would have been much, much easier. So do you say the bottom line is get a business advisor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or tap into resources that are available.
Yeah.
That's another thing. I think people sometimes think business ownership is isolating, and it can be if you let it.
Right.
But tapping into the business community, we have Startup NV, Startup Vegas. We have Employee NV through the state. We have all the chambers, Henderson Chamber, Vegas Chamber, Urban Chamber, Women's Chamber. There are all kinds of different organizations that have development programs. We talked about certifying as minority-owned, women-owned businesses. There's also certifications for veteran-owned businesses, LGBTQ-owned businesses, disability-owned businesses. And those organizations have resources for our individual businesses if you go and take advantage of it. So looking and really surveying what's available, what state programs are available, what programs are available through the city of North Las Vegas has a business development center just for small businesses in order to engage them and provide resources. So there are things out there. Take advantage of it. Because, too, if you just go on your own and you're just hiring HR, business advisor, bookkeeping and accounting, there's all your you're gonna there's all your revenue.
Your business, all your revenue. That's what I'm learning too.
So there are resources.
No, this is really, really good. So tell us one thing that's most challenging for your business, and then one thing that is so rewarding.
Most challenging is finding out that I, as an individual, am not scalable. That is something that I haven't mastered yet because I'm doing things like this, speaking at events. I'm speaking at a conference on Monday. I'm attending events. I'm business development. I'm working on projects. But knowing how and to be able to scale my business while maintaining revenue, because I am, as an individual, I'm not scalable. That's one of the most challenging things. Most rewarding is being a job creator. Yeah. So we have a mother of 2 on our team who she works remotely and is a self-starter and takes initiative and is a phenomenal worker. She's a mom and she has 2 toddlers and she works all of this in, so she can accomplish so much in a short period of time. And having her on our team makes us all better. Seeing that she's growing and providing for her 2 kids and trusting us in that process is really rewarding. We have another team member who traditionally, resume, maybe wouldn't be hired by other companies. Yeah. Didn't have a formal education in video production. He was working at Best Buy before he started working with Storyville RD, but is a phenomenal technical mind. He serves as our IT. He's a videographer. Wow. He's an editor. And he's really just a sponge and has soaked
versatile.
Up super and has soaked up all the training we've poured him into. We sent him to a national training. He took that and ran with it. So he's just a shining star in our organization. And when I talk about seeing someone's whole self and knowing what people have on a resume is not their whole person, but lived experiences, ambition, initiative, all of these things that you don't necessarily put on a resume are so important. Yeah. And recognizing that is something I think small businesses can tap into versus a corporate hiring where resumes come in, AI scans, do you match? Oh, nope, you don't have a college degree, out.
Yeah.
Well, you may be sending out a gem. Yeah. And that's where I think us as smaller companies can really pick up, if we're willing to put in the time and the recruiting efforts to look and see who's really out there, we can find just people who can thrive in our organizations.
Yeah, I just did that. I had outsourced my executive admin to the Philippines, and it didn't work out. It doesn't always work out. Mm-hmm. And I found someone here in the States. She lives in Missouri, a mama of 2 also. And same thing, she's wonderful. She's a go-getter. She's a hard worker. And I love that aspect of it, knowing that you're help providing for another family. Mm-hmm. I just love it. So I'm looking I can't be scalable, but to scale my business also, because I love that aspect, to know that we're employing somebody else. And I love what you said, Christine, when it comes to the resume, like getting people in front of you that actually look at a paper and judge people based off of that. That was one of the things I do. I had a bunch of resumes, and I just sat in front of everybody and talked to them to see who would be a good fit. Mm-hmm. So AI can be a curse and it can be a blessing too.
Yes.
Yeah. So with that, is there anything that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you?
I don't think so. I'm here for you.
And you have been great. I have really, really enjoyed this so much. So tell me, what's one thing you want to leave our audience with today?
Show up for yourself the way you show up for others. Because there are so many times then when that negative self-talk comes into play. I would never tell you, you're dumb, you're this, you're that, you look fat in that outfit. I would never tell you any of those things. We shouldn't be telling ourselves things that we wouldn't say to others. And that, especially as women, I think is something we wear too much, is judging ourselves even when we've released judgment of others. So giving ourselves the grace to learn, to fail, to grieve, to succeed, all of those things are valuable. And touting our accomplishments, standing tall in our accomplishments and our skills doesn't mean we're not humble.
Yeah.
It means humility is knowing we're not better than anyone else just because of what we do or how we look or what we accomplish. But we also don't want to shy away from our own superpowers.
I'm so glad you said that. It took me a minute after I start my business to get on LinkedIn and talk about me and what I do. It took me a minute to do that, and because of all the things you just said. So I think it's so important to showcase what you do because people won't know.
Mm-hmm.
How would they know if we don't talk about it? But I also think, having the humility in it as we speak about it. And I love this saying. I've seen it somewhere where somebody said, what do you stop wearing at the age of 40? And I'll say, what do you stop wearing if anyone, what do you stop wearing, period, is the opinions of other people, and move forward in who you are, in your beautifulness, in your broken messiness, because that's what makes us human. And with that, friends, today it's a wrap. Thank you for tuning in to the Sally Allen podcast, where we give voice to stories of resilience. Until next time, this is Sally Allen. Remember that every setback is a setup for a comeback. And remember, if you like this podcast, the only way we can get it out is if you like, subscribe, and share.